안녕하세요.
The luxurious Huang Group building towered over the heart of Seoul, reflecting the power and influence of its CEO, Kang Ji-hoon. Known for his cold demeanor and calculated decisions, Ji-hoon did not believe in sentimental distractions. To him, love was an unnecessary luxury. However, fate had other plans. In the vast marble reception area, Han Soo-min struggled to balance a stack of files while trying to answer a phone call. Recently hired in the administrative department, she was still adapting to the company's intense routine. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and her expression was one of pure concentration. Her formal uniform did little to hide the simplicity of her background, something that made her feel slightly out of place among the impeccably dressed executives of Huang Group. Ji-hoon stepped out of the elevator, followed closely by his assistants. His custom-tailored suit, as flawless as ever, exuded authority. His sharp eyes scanned every detail around him, searching for any sign of inefficiency. As he walked past the reception desk, a small accident occurred. In her rush to balance the documents and the phone simultaneously, Soo-min tripped at the edge of the counter. The files slipped from her hands, scattering across the floor in a chaotic mess of papers. Without realizing who was standing before her, she hurriedly crouched down to gather them. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, and she muttered to herself, "Sorry, I'm so clumsy," she murmured, grabbing the papers as fast as she could. Ji-hoon glanced down, meeting the young woman's determined gaze. For a split second, something inside him wavered. There was an energy about her that he couldn't ignore. The noise of the bustling environment seemed to fade for a moment as he found himself observing her more closely. What was it about her that caught his attention? "Be more careful next time." His voice was cold, yet his eyes lingered on her with curiosity. Soo-min blinked, suddenly realizing who was in front of her. Her heart pounded. It was Kang Ji-hoon, the feared CEO. A shiver ran down her spine, but she quickly gathered the courage to stand up and face the situation. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the files. "Yes, sir," she answered firmly, gathering the documents swiftly. Ji-hoon said nothing more, but his expression remained thoughtful as he walked away, returning to his usual path. His assistants followed him hurriedly, exchanging discreet glances among themselves. No one had ever seen the CEO waste time observing someone, especially a low-level employee. Soo-min, on the other hand, let out a deep sigh as soon as he left. She could hardly believe what had just happened. "Congratulations, Han Soo-min. You just humiliated yourself in front of the supreme boss," she thought, feeling her face grow even hotter. But deep down, she had no idea that this unexpected encounter would change her life forever. In the days that followed, Kang Ji-hoon tried to ignore the inexplicable discomfort he felt whenever he passed by the administrative floor. He was a rational, controlled man, and nothing should distract him from his business objectives. But against all logic, the image of Han Soo-min kept surfacing in his mind. The way she looked at him directly, without fear, without flattery, was unusual in his world. He was used to being revered, feared, but not treated with such natural ease. Soo-min, on the other hand, did everything possible to avoid another embarrassing encounter. She didn't even dare glance in the direction of the executive offices. But fate, once again, seemed unwilling to cooperate. On a tense morning, the administrative department was summoned to an emergency meeting with Ji-hoon. The reason? A critical error in a contract that could cost the company millions. Soo-min had been involved in reviewing the document, and her heart pounded at the thought of facing the CEO again. Inside the spacious conference room, tension hung thick in the air as Ji-hoon flipped through the papers, his expression unreadable. The silence was suffocating until he finally spoke, his firm voice cutting through the room. "I want to know who was responsible for this mistake." All eyes turned to Soo-min. She swallowed hard but did not back down. "Sir, I reviewed this document, but the error originated from incorrect information I received from another department. I am not absolving myself of responsibility, but I believe the issue lies at the source of the data." A murmur spread through the room. Few dared to speak so directly to Ji-hoon. He studied her for a long moment before leaning back in his chair. "Find out who made the mistake and bring me a solution by the end of the day." You're dismissed." Soo-min nodded, relieved that she hadn't been fired in front of everyone. But as she left the room, a shiver ran down her spine. Ji-hoon was still watching her with that strange, unreadable gaze. As if he were trying to decipher something, he didn't seem to understand what. As she walked down the hallway, her legs trembled slightly. She had faced difficult situations before, but that meeting with Ji-hoon had left her particularly unsettled. Why did he look at her like that? It wasn't just severity or high expectations. There was something that sent a chill through her. Later that evening, back at the office, Soo-min combed through the documents and pinpointed the error. A piece of incorrect information from the finance department had compromised the negotiations. A mix of relief and frustration washed over her. She wasn't directly at fault, but she knew that if she didn't present a solution quickly, her position at the company would be at risk. When the clock struck 6, Soo-min gathered her reports and headed to the executive office. Her heart pounded as Ji-hoon's assistant announced her arrival. The door swung open, revealing the CEO's luxurious yet minimalist office. He sat behind a sleek glass desk, his eyes locked on her with an intense focus. "Sir, here is the source of the error and the solution to prevent future issues." She placed the documents on his desk and waited, doing her best to maintain a firm posture. Ji-hoon took the papers and analyzed them in silence. The air in the room felt heavy, and Soo-min felt each second drag on. Finally, he lifted his gaze to her. "You worked on this all day?" "Yes, sir. I needed to correct the problem as quickly as possible." A flicker of interest crossed his eyes. He admired efficiency and dedication, and Soo-min had demonstrated both. But beyond that, he found himself curious about her. Who was this woman who dared to face Kang Ji-hoon without fear? "Well done, Han Soo-min. I'll consider this solution. You may go now." She nodded, turned, and walked out, feeling his gaze follow her until she reached the door. Ji-hoon remained seated, his fingers tapping lightly against the desk. For the first time in a long while, he felt something different, something that could become dangerous. In the following days, Han Soo-min tried to focus solely on her work. She avoided any unnecessary contact with Kang Ji-hoon as much as possible. But it was impossible to ignore the subtle changes in the CEO's behavior. He seemed to observe her more often, and that left her unsettled. What did he want from her? Ji-hoon, on the other hand, struggled against his own curiosity. He shouldn't be so interested in an ordinary employee. But Soo-min was different. Her sincerity and dedication intrigued him. He was used to dealing with people who always sought to please him out of self-interest, but she treated him with respect without flattery. That evening, an important company event gathered directors and shareholders at a luxurious restaurant. To her surprise, Soo-min was invited by her direct supervisor to represent the administrative department. She wore an elegant yet modest dress and tried to stay away from curious glances. Midway through the dinner, Ji-hoon approached and, to everyone's shock, sat beside her. A murmur spread across the table. No one expected the CEO to show interest in such a low-ranking employee. "You seem uncomfortable," he remarked, watching her closely. Soo-min struggled to maintain her composure. "I'm just not used to events like this, sir." He gave a faint smile. "Something rarely seen. Kang Ji-hoon is enough." Her eyes widened in surprise at his informality. Before she could respond, one of the company's most influential directors, Mr. Park, made a sarcastic remark. "Mr. Kang, I see you have a rather peculiar taste in company tonight." The room fell silent. Everyone awaited the CEO's reaction. Ji-hoon cast a cold glance at the man, his expression hardening. "Make another disrespectful comment, and you won't be welcome at another company event." The director paled and fell silent. Soo-min, however, felt a tightness in her chest. She didn't want to cause problems for Ji-hoon. Later, as she left the restaurant, she was surprised to find him waiting near his car. "Why did you defend me?" He stared at her for a moment before answering. "Because you deserve respect, Han Soo-min." In that instant, something shifted between them, something even Ji-hoon could no longer ignore. In the days following the dinner, Soo-min felt the atmosphere around her change drastically. The curious glances and hushed whispers in the office corridors unsettled her. But the worst part was Kang Ji-hoon's growing presence in her life. He made no direct moves, but he was always nearby watching her subtly, shielding her from unfair criticism and occasionally provoking reactions that left her breathless. However, not everyone welcomed this newfound closeness. Ji Hoon's family, particularly his mother, Madame Kang, quickly learned of Han Su-min's existence. For a woman who had spent her life building a dynasty, the idea of her son being involved with an employee was unacceptable. On a rainy afternoon, Su-min was caught off guard by an unexpected invitation. Ji Hoon's personal assistant summoned her to a private meeting room. Upon entering, she found herself face to face with an elegant woman of impeccable posture who studied her with a scrutinizing gaze. "So, you are Han Su-min," Madame Kang said, crossing her legs with calculated grace. "I wanted to see with my own eyes the woman who has been distracting my son." A chill ran down Su-min's spine, but she held her ground. "Madame Kang, it is not my intention to distract Mr. Ji Hoon. I am simply doing my job." A cold smile touched the older woman's lips. "Let's be direct, Miss Han. My son does not belong to your world. He has responsibilities, a name to uphold. If you are wise, you will step away before this turns into a bigger problem." The statement lingered in the air like a threat. But before Su-min could respond, the door suddenly swung open. Ji Hoon stepped inside, his expression darkening as he took in his mother's presence. His eyes flicked to Su-min, who looked distressed, then back to his mother. "What are you doing here, mother?" His voice was cold, controlled, but laced with disapproval. Madame Kang stood, maintaining her poised demeanor. "Simply trying to prevent you from making a mistake. I hope this young woman understands her place." She walked past Ji Hoon without a backward glance. The silence that followed was suffocating. Su-min lowered her gaze, unsure of what to say. "She shouldn't have done that," Ji Hoon said, his voice softer now. "I hope you don't take her words to heart." Su-min gave a sad smile. "I expected something like this. I know what people think about someone like me being by your side." Ji Hoon took a step closer, his intense gaze fixed on her. "And what do you think, Su-min?" She hesitated. The cost of being by his side seemed too high, but looking into his determined eyes, she realized that perhaps he was willing to fight for her. The question was she willing to fight too? The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. Han Su-min knew that by staying by Kang Ji Hoon's side, she would face judgmental stares and uncomfortable situations. However, what scared her the most was Ji Hoon himself, his silent persistence, his ever-watchful gaze, the way he gravitated toward her, even when no words were spoken. He was willing to fight for her, but was she ready to face the world alongside him? One evening, after a long day at work, Ji Hoon appeared beside Su-min's desk, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You need to get more rest." She smiled, accepting the cup with a small nod. "And you need to stop watching over me." He let out a quiet laugh, something rare for a man who always wore a serious expression. "If I don't do it, who will?" The air between them grew heavy. And then, the unexpected happened. Ji Hoon's father, Kang Dae-hyun, entered the office, followed closely by Madame Kang and the company's board members. The president's expression was severe. "Ji Hoon, we need to talk." The meeting took place behind closed doors, but rumors spread quickly. It was said that the board demanded Ji Hoon take a step back. A woman like Su-min would never be accepted into the Kang dynasty. Once again, she found herself treated as an obstacle in the life of the man she loved. Hours later, Ji Hoon found her at the cafe in the building. He looked exhausted but determined. "They want me to stay away from you." Su-min wasn't surprised. "And what are you going to do?" He took her hand firmly, unfazed by the stares around them. "I won't give you up, but I need to know if you're willing to fight this battle with me." She looked down at their intertwined hands, feeling his warmth. Was love enough to face a war against the world? Before she could answer, a group of employees walked into the cafe, whispering among themselves. It was clear that news of her involvement with Ji Hoon had spread like wildfire. A weight settled on Su-min's chest. It wasn't just the opinion of the Kang family that troubled her, it was also how her colleagues saw her. Would she always be known as the woman who snared the heir of the company? Would her work, her competence, be reduced to just that? Ji-hoon noticed her hesitation and with a quiet sigh murmured, "I know this is hard, but you're not alone. I'll be with you every step of the way." Soo-min searched his eyes, looking for reassurance. Ji-hoon wasn't just a powerful CEO. He was a man willing to stand against everyone for her. But would that be enough? Her heart wanted to believe it would. That very night, as soon as she arrived home, Soo-min received an unexpected call. It was her best friend, Jae-in. "Soo-min, are you okay? I saw some awful comments about you online." Soo-min quickly grabbed her phone and felt her stomach churn. Anonymous posts on online forums labeled her a gold digger, a social climber, and an opportunist. Some messages were so cruel that she had to close the app. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. That night, she tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. Her heart was torn. She wanted to believe in Ji-hoon's words. But what if she was only dragging him into a scandal? Her reputation could be ruined forever. The next morning, Ji-hoon was waiting for her at the entrance of the company. The moment he saw her, he walked toward her with determined steps and gently cupped her face. "I saw what they're saying online. You don't have to go through this alone, Soo-min. We'll get through it together." She swallowed hard, feeling a tightness in her chest. But before she could respond, a black limousine pulled up in front of them. The door opened, and to her shock, Kang Dae-hyun himself stepped out. "Get in. We need to talk." Now, Soo-min looked at Ji-hoon, and he gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. She knew that this conversation would change everything. Taking a deep breath, Soo-min made her decision. Inside the limousine, the silence was deafening. Soo-min kept her hands clasped together on her lap, trying to mask her nervousness. Beside her, Ji-hoon maintained a serious expression, but his thumb gently brushed against her hand, a silent reminder that they were in this battle together. The patriarch of the Kang family, Kang Dae-hyun, observed them from the opposite seat with an unreadable expression. Finally, he sighed and crossed his arms. "Ji-hoon, do you understand what you're about to lose?" The young CEO met his father's gaze unwaveringly. "I know exactly what I'm gaining, and that is more important than any fortune." Dae-hyun scoffed. "This woman does not belong to our world. She will never be accepted. Are you willing to give up everything for her?" Ji-hoon held Soo-min's hand firmly and responded without hesitation. "If choosing her means losing your approval, then so be it. But I will not lose the love of my life." Soo-min looked at him, her eyes glistening with emotion. Could a man like Ji-hoon truly choose love over fortune? Dae-hyun remained silent for a long moment, before pulling an envelope from inside his jacket. "I expected you to answer that way, so I had an investigation done." He slid the envelope toward Soo-min, who hesitated before opening it. Inside were detailed documents about her life, her family, and her financial struggles. Her heart pounded. "Is this a warning?" Dae-hyun leaned forward. "This is for you to understand the gravity of the situation. The press is already watching you both. The moment Ji-hoon makes this relationship official, your life will no longer be your own. You will be exposed, judged, and attacked. Can you handle that pressure?" A shiver ran down Soo-min's spine. She had known this wouldn't be easy, but hearing it directly from the Kang family made everything feel even more real. She turned to Ji-hoon, who simply tightened his grip on her hand. "No matter what happens, I choose you," he said firmly. For a brief moment, Dae-hyun's gaze softened before he composed himself again. "Then you're on your own. If you insist on this, Ji-hoon will be disinherited." Ji-hoon didn't even blink. "I would rather build my own empire with the person I love than inherit one that imprisons me." The decision was made. That very week, Ji-hoon called a press conference, officially declaring his love for Soo-min. The scandal was immediate. Headlines exploded across the media. "Heir of Kang Enterprises abandons fortune for love." Many criticized, others supported, but Ji-hoon and Soo-min stood firm. The following months were a time of rebuilding. Ji-hoon founded his own company, proving that his talent extended far beyond his family name. Soo-min, in turn, became a respected businesswoman, showing the world that she was much more than the woman who won a CEO's heart. 1 year later, they were married in a private ceremony, surrounded by friends and family who truly supported them. And when some time after, they welcomed their first child, Ji-hoon held the baby in his arms and whispered to Sumin, "This is our family, our empire." She smiled, knowing that despite all the challenges, they had won, because true love always finds a way.